Kia ora, good morning. The mystery inside history. I don't. That's not the jingle for it. I'm just being silly. So I'm sitting here having my breakfast, just listening to some stuff that I have saved on my YouTube channel. You know, like background noise. And obviously, as someone who is an occult physicist, and that, regardless of anything I do for human trafficking and stuff, I am an occult physicist, and my whole life has been about studying the occult. The occult being made up of the paranormal and supernatural realms. So, you know, with my mysteries inside histories, I do unsolved things, I do unexplained things, I explain the unexplainable. I fix the paranormal and I fix the supernatural by explaining it all using science and logic and reason and all of that. And when I get out of here, I want to be able to make these shows. I want to go out with a film crew. I want to go to these places. I want to explain it all to people, put it on my channel, and fix the problem. Now, the reason why I'm talking about the Crenshaw house, the slave house, is because it was in Illinois. And my radio show, the Paranormal Hour, was in Chicago, in Illinois. And I was getting ready to present the idea to the station because my Wednesday 3 o'clock, I was given the prime time slot, by the way. I was a brand new show that came out of nowhere and I was given the prime time slot and I broke records at that radio station. People loved me. I was what people had been crying out for. And I was being syndicated to other radio stations and they were getting ready to syndicate me with New York, iHeartRadio and all that, because I was smashing records at that radio station. It's just that, looking back now, I didn't know half as much then as I do now, but now that I know what I know and I can do what I do, I'm ready to put it out there. But while Trump and Musk and all of that are in power, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to go to America and set up a radio station and do all of this little thing. So I'm just doing my bit now and sitting and waiting. But I was getting ready to present the idea to the radio station WRMN 1410 of me going out with a recording crew with no cameras, just a recording crew, and going to places like where they had the St. Valentine's Day massacre, the Crenshaw house, that sort of thing. Even you know, the in the surrounding areas and that, like, you know, the Villisca axe murders and all the places like Wisconsin where I was actually staying at the time, the Jeffrey Dahmer place, the Ed Gein place, all the sort of places where it was famous for death and tragedy and murder and serial killers and all that, sort of in that surrounding area, because they were all within an easy drive for each other. And me going there with my recording crew and letting people listen to my investigations, because it would be spooky. It's spookier when you have to use your imagination based on sound, and you know, the audible experience is way creepier than the visual experience, you know. And this was one of the houses that I wanted to go to. Now, I've told you the story about what happened when I went to that plantation and when I was staying at the New Bern Marine Base in North Carolina. I don't know if the plantation was in North Carolina or South Carolina, but I told you the story about how I was asked to go there because the people were scared. They were seeing things and hearing things, and it's when I found out about, when I was saying to Priscilla, who I was with at the time, when I was getting ready to go, about seeing the people falling out of the sky and seeing the slaves, and I was describing everything I was seeing before I even knew the place, before I even knew anything about where we were going. But she said that she purposefully didn't say anything. She kept her mouth shut because she was one of these people who just soaked up the experience of being around me. She loved every minute of what was coming out of my mouth because it was always blowing her mind, you know. And she recorded, knowing her, she's still going to have the recording. She used her phone to take me going around this plantation, I will look hideously fat and gross because I had, I was still losing weight and that I would have looked huge. But she recorded me walking around the inside of the property. I don't know if she recorded me having the conversation with the slaves, though, and the German woman that I saw standing on the porch with that big, beautiful, beaming smile of hers, who was hiding an underground railway. All I know is that when she drove me there, we went past the area where Blackbeard was said to hang around, and it was the greatest experience of my life. Her husband, John, who was the Marine, took me to a battlefield. I have got photos on one of my old SIM cards of, the Civil War. He took me to a battlefield because it was really funny because it was raining and he was like, oh, if you can do what you say you can do, stop the rain. And I did. And then he just shut up and he was like, okay, I'm just going to shut up now. And then he was taking me around the battlefield and he was telling me some of the historical things. And I was telling him what I was seeing. I can't remember what I told him though, unfortunately. But I know that he was impressed. And that was a new boom, but where the plantation was where I did this investigation, I don't know if it was South or North Carolina. I'm not sure. I'd never been there before, so it was all new to me. But this is all, I'm getting to the point of all of this, don't worry. I Just before I was getting ready to leave, Priscilla took me on a night out to a karaoke bar, and I got to talk to a lot of people there about their haunted experiences in North Carolina. And I was taken to Fort Macron by one of my former students who was Turkish. She was in the Coast Guard and her husband was a Marine. She was one of my students and she came to spend the day with me and gave me a good luck charm for my as a wedding present because I was getting ready to marry Martin. It was the all seeing eye. I shouldn't, but she was witness. This woman from the Coast Guard. I think she may have been in the Israeli army at one point. I can't remember. But I know she was in the Coast Guard, married to a Marine, and they were stationed in North Carolina at Newbern. And I did readings for her husband and all of that, and they were really lovely people. But she had to leave being a student because she was pregnant, and they were getting ready to be. They were hoping that they could both be stationed together somewhere else, so they could start their new life. And in her culture, you don't mess with the occult when you're pregnant, which was fine. So she took me to Fort Macron, and we did a walk around in there, and we had the freakiest experience there. She witnessed time jumping firsthand, because what happened was they had all these rooms set up with displays because it was a museum. I have got photos of it up. You'll find it on my X and that as well. And we went to go into this room, but we heard people talking. So we were like, oh, we just assumed they were having a meeting there or something. I think you could even hold events there. I can't remember, but we didn't go in because we heard talking. So we went to go down this little side hallway bit, and as we turned right to sort of go past where we heard the meeting, there was no one in the room. Like there was no one there. There was just like dummies and stuff set up, and she was like, what the hell? And I said to her, that's time jumping. I said, that's a haunting. I said, you just witnessed. I said that what you heard was people going about their daily business in that room. They wouldn't have even known we were there. I said that's a classic that's a classic ghost. Sorry, not haunting. They didn't know we were there. They didn't acknowledge we were there. It was just like we were standing on either side of Time's Veil. And a ghost is when you hear them, when you see them, but they don't know you're there. And I said to her, this is what I was explaining to her, because obviously she was a student still at the time. And I said, that's a classic ghost. It's when the stone tape theory, when time records energy and plays it back when the frequencies are just right. It's like the universe puts the needle on the record and plays back everything that it recorded in that room. And this is what I was explaining to her, because you have ghosts and you have hauntings, and with hauntings they know you're there, but with ghosts, ghost recordings, the stone tape theory, they don't know you're there. And it's usually when with ghosts and that, what usually sets the recording off, that records them in the frequency of time and the fabric of time to be played back later on in the realms of the paranormal and all that, is or what people think is the paranormal, but it's actually supernatural, is that at the time that, what you're hearing and what you're seeing, they're going through times of high stress or grief or excitement or passion, when the emotions are running really high. It's a pitch above the normal frequency surrounding the Earth's atmosphere that's so great that time records it, history records it. And then when the frequencies are right, when the right people come along who are able to exist above, like the Schumann resonance, which is the energy field that surrounds the Earth with a pocket of energy that can be measured and interfered with using satellites and direct energy weapons and that sort of thing. When you're a pitch above that, and because she was getting ready to conceive at the time, or she was pregnant at the time, I can't remember. Blah. She gave me because the wedding present she gave me was because she was leaving because she was pregnant, so she must have been pregnant, like just newly pregnant. But because she was in a frequency above the Schumann, she heard it too. Because she was in my presence and we were happy to be together and we were having this great experience, and her and her husband were getting ready to embark on this wonderful new life together, and she was a little bit stressed out and just needed consolation and reassurance that everything was going to be okay, blah blah blah. She felt it too, she experienced it too, she got to witness it as well, and it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had, being there with a student, which is why I always had that plan of when I go to America, I'll get my American students together and we will make these TV shows, the Mystery Inside History. And we'll go around driving around America, because I was going to retire them all and make them famous. And we'd go to these places and do investigations and stuff, because once I was in North Carolina and driving through West Virginia and all that, it made me see firsthand. Hang on, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Going to get a letter. 1 a kiss, 2 a wish, 3 a letter. It made me witness firsthand the kind of history that I, as a Kiwi, as an Indigenous Pacific Islander, could never have imagined ever experiencing. And when it comes to like Indigenous people and the slave trade and Holocaust survivors and stuff, they're mind-blowing for me. When I got to actually meet people who survived the concentration camps when I was a teenager, it hit me like a ton of bricks that this wasn't just stuff you saw in movies and on TV. This shit really happened. And it left an impact on me. And then when I was in North Carolina and seeing the whole slave trade thing and piracy, with Blackbeard and all of that, it hit me, and it gave me this appetite to want more. I needed more of it because I could fix it, and then, of course, watching Faces of the Forgotten, which is the video I was just watching now, reminded me of the things that I wanted to work on. It was Faces of the Forgotten that allowed me to have that conversation with Emmett Till, who says that people got a lot of stuff wrong about what happened to him and why it happened. There's a lot of misunderstandings there, and Hannah Okoshi, what happened to her, how she was executed at the age of 12 and all that. So it made me want more, and it made me want to do things with my students, but I had to train them up first. You know, I've got screenshots of me trying to train up Ria and Nikki and bringing Rocio in on it just before shit hit the fan, and it was just, they were failing miserably. It was like I was destined to fail because they were never supposed to be a part of what I was doing, because these weren't good people. They were hiding infidelities with my ex, you know, with my husband. They were allowing him to have relationships with pedophiles and child groomers and that, and keeping it a secret from me, while planning with my ex-husband and Elon Musk and all of that, you know, what they were planning to do to me. And I didn't see it at the time, but I wasn't meant to. They were never ever meant to be a part of what I was creating, because they're bad people. And I would have taken them to these kind of places, and they would have had completely exaggerated reactions to them, because they exist in the realms of the paranormal, and the paranormal is always where fear and darkness and sorrow and grief and pain and suffering resides. Whereas the supernatural is where love and light and faith and learning and knowledge and wisdom and power in that resides. And you can only be in those two worlds at once if you've trained yourself to be able to physically withstand the switch in frequency, because it's like night and day. It's like oil and vinegar. The two don't go together. So if you have to exist in both realms, you have to train your body within an inch of your soul's life to be able to withstand the frequency, which is why, with all the work that I do, I get so tired and hungry all the time. You could never do what I do as a vegetarian or a vegan. So I was getting ready to take these propositions to the radio station and say, how about we do this? Because it's the sort of thing that my listeners would have eaten up. They would have, you know, they were already starting to recommend places to me on my radio show and all of that. But the guy I was working with, my co-host Chuck, came to me one day and asked me if I would fabricate test results, because I was putting out tests to test people's telepathic frequencies. And he came to me just before one of my shows and said, you know, would you be up for lying about the results? You know, it'll make you look good, it'll be great for the show, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I can't do that. I said, because it's my reputation on the line. I even told the manager of the station this. I had a conversation with her a couple of years ago, because I was promised paid advertising, and they promised me all sorts, and I never got it. And when she contacted me to say, you know, why aren't you, like, you owe money and blah blah blah, and I told her everything, she was completely unaware of it all, and, you know, apologised profusely, because I protected the radio station, because she knew none of what Chuck had been doing behind the scenes. He ended up leaving the station. And yeah, so, and then it was not long after that everything turned sour, and I lost the show, and, you know, but then I had to spend that time perfecting my craft anyway, so I'm not sorry that it happened. But I always feel bad for my listeners, because they loved what I was putting out there. I had people, the same callers coming back every week, calling in to talk, and, you know, they were so excited. And when I was invited to do their Halloween show, you know, to come and have a stall next to the male version of Elvira, who did, like, you know, he had like we represented horror shows and stuff. He was the male version of Elvira, which apparently was quite the honour and a big deal. But that's when Chris called me back to the UK and sabotaged my whole career, and all hell broke loose and blah blah blah. But I knew I wanted to do more. I knew I had to do more. I could do so much for the history of America when it came to the Civil War and the slave trade and everything that happened with Indigenous people and that, especially because I'm paying off karmic debt. I know that my ancestors as Māori royals and Egyptian royals, guaranteed we would have had slaves, guaranteed. Even though we were treated like shit by the Illuminati, the New World Order who were trying to take over the world, including the British Empire and the Saudis and all that, they had it in for my ancestors. And we lost our thrones basically because of the people that I'm up against today, the British government, and some people in the Middle East who aren't friends to my Iranian ancestors and all that. People on the Epstein list who are connected to the Middle East, like, DP World, the CEO of DP World, the Arab there. This is me paying off karmic debt by speaking up for and helping bring a voice to the dead who were victims to all of this, including kings and queens of the British Empire and stuff. So with the Crenshaw house, if America is where I'm going, if this is where I'm headed, if this is exactly where God needs me to be, America, if we're going back to the original plan, after Trump and Musk and that are gone, I can go to these places and do these investigations. And I want to go to the Crenshaw house because it's one of these places that has been misunderstood because people do not understand what's happening there. And people are all dramatic about it. People get very dramatic when it comes to the paranormal, but I mean, the paranormal exists within the Schumann resonance. And that's where all the negative energy resides, fear, anxiety, paranoia, overthinking, possessions, psychosis, that sort of thing. All the negative emotions and negative thoughts exist within the paranormal realms, which is which resides in the Schumann resonance, the frequency of the Schumann resonance, and it can be manipulated by machines, by mind control, by being fed negative thought processes. And this is what I'm trying to clear up, because if I can go around the world and America clearing all of this up and explaining it all to people, our countries will run on a higher frequency and everything will just calm down and you'll get peace. It will bring peace, both as individuals and as a town, as a state, as a county, as a country, as a continent. It will bring peace. But I'm one person. And I was trying to train my students to help me do the same thing, but they all ended up, bar two of them, being quite bad people. So, whatever, okay, fine. I didn't know enough back then, but I do now, and I'm ready to go. And if it's just me and a film crew and a recording crew, because what I'd like to do now is put it on radio first, and then a week later release the video so that you can then see what you were hearing. Because if you listen to me first, you'll retain the information I'm trying to teach you, and then when we sync it up with what I was seeing at the time, you'll go into the visual already having the information in your head based on what I fed you audibly. And then it helps balance your mind out, using biorhythmic engineering, okay? And with the Crenshaw house, now, just a brief history, Illinois was a free state. and they basically stole free men, free men, women, and children who to be slaves. Because Illinois is a free state, and they couldn't just have them like out on the plantations and stuff to help mine the salt in the area, they locked them up in an attic and prison cells and stuff, and they were overseen by a guy called Uncle Bob, who went around impregnating everyone. Now, this is important because remember in my Chris Tompkins, if I get cut off, you'll know. Remember with Chris Tompkins, I said they take African Americans for one of like four reasons: as a sacrifice, to do slave labor, for impregnation, and to do like eugenics and stuff, to harvest organs. I'm just trying to think. Is it to get them pregnant? To take their seed, because when it comes to Epstein and child sacrifice, and this has been going on long before Epstein. When you see a lot of babies and children and dead bodies and that turn up, and they have no idea who they are or where they came from, and 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever years later, they still don't know, they haven't been able to match their DNA with anyone or anything like that. It's because 9 times out of 10 they were part of a breeding farm, and so they take a lot of African Americans now, like with Chris and that, like they did back then, for breeding farms, because they need sacrifices, they need people to give to the pedophiles and that, they need people to experiment on, and because African Americans and like Indigenous people, if you know my work with the Highway of Tears, they're considered like the lowest in the food chain. And Indigenous people from ancient cultures, by the according to the white man and all that, are considered like the lowest in the food chain. But it's because our bloodlines are older. We actually hold more power. From a supernatural standpoint, we hold more power because we were the navigators to the stars. We're the ones that have access to the universe that nobody else has. Without us, these people wouldn't exist. They wouldn't have even survived coming to places like America, So I'm doing my bit. I know my ancestors would have had slaves, and I'm doing my bit to help free them in death. And I can do it. I can go to places like the Crenshaw house. People say it's the most haunted house in Illinois, and that even the toughest, bravest veterans and that can't spend a night in the attic. I would be able to do it, no problem. I understand what it is, and instead of running in fear, because and every time they bring that, the Warrens in, oh, demons and these people should have been banned from speaking in public. Absolutely horrendous misinformation they were putting out there. These people, you demonologists, you're not dealing with demons at all. You're dealing with a house that was made of like wood and stone and salt and clay and all of that, that recorded some of the most tragic events in that state's history. And then when people were coming near it, they were trying to play the recordings back to say, you need to do something about the suffering. Are you listening to these chains? Are you hearing these people call out? Can you hear it? Can you see what we had to witness and record? Why aren't you doing anything? Stop dicking about and thinking that it's ghosts and hauntings and shit, and actually do something to cross these spirits over. Because the thing is that people that believe in the paranormal are the whole reason why we have the paranormal, and none of it's going away. If you're a psychic and a medium and a clairvoyant and a paranormal investigator, you're supposed to be going in there to free these spirits. And going in with Bibles isn't going to work with a lot of these people, because a lot of them lost faith. A lot of them didn't believe in God, depending on how far back their cultures went. A lot of them had gods and not a God. A lot of them lost faith in God because of what was happening to them, and they weren't being helped. And so when you go into places like the Crenshaw house and you're experiencing the cries and the screams and the whips and, you know, the sound of the whipping and the chains and all that, they're not ghosts. They're people calling out for help. It's the house calling out for help to say, somebody do something to release this land and this property from the suffering. And then in doing that, everything stops. This minister, this guy that goes in who's an experienced exorcist and that went in and he sees that there's a bit of the Bible that he can read out that, you know, crosses the spirits over, and then he ended up in a lunatic asylum, and they're like, oh my God, it's because the house is so evil. No, not at all. It's because he didn't know what he was doing. He was messing with the occult. He was already obviously taking a lot of his own darkness in, especially if he was dealing with exorcisms. When you don't understand what you're dealing with, it messes with your head. And when you're taking that in there, even with good intentions, you experience things. You're opening Pandora's box. And then people run away, and then people look and they're scared of the house. And then in the meantime, all the slaves, all that pain and suffering that was soaked up and absorbed into the house and the soil is still being replayed back in the hopes that somebody's going to bloody go there and fix it. Everybody goes in with the wrong understanding of what it is they're dealing with because they don't understand that there's a difference between the paranormal and the supernatural. But if you're walking into a building and you're hearing something that was recorded in the past being played back to you either visually or audibly, you're dealing with the supernatural. That's you're witnessing physics defy itself firsthand, but because you don't understand what you're dealing with, you automatically assume it's dead people walking the earth and demons. Evil gets recorded in time faster than joy and happiness do. You hear darkness and sin and evil and pain and suffering recorded a lot more than you will do people laughing and singing and celebrating, you know, weddings and that sort of thing. Is usually you hear children laughing, running up and down the hallway and stuff, because children are pure and innocent, so their pitch is recorded in the atmosphere of time. So then people go to places like Gettysburg, which I went to for 5 minutes and never even begun to got to investigate the place, and I desperately want to go back. I want to do a whole tour of America while I'm waiting to find where it is I'm supposed to build my foundation. And I want to see it all. I want to go to all these places where these tragedies took place for black, white, indigenous, Chinese, Irish, all of them. Wherever the history is there, that's where I want to be, that's where I want to go, because I know how to fix it. Like the Winchester Mansion, I can fix that place because they misunderstood Sarah Winchester. And she was a Freemason. So I know what I'm doing, and it just... Tying in the whole Emmett Till, Chris Tompkins, my experience in North Carolina at the plantation and the Crenshaw house, and that there's a lot I can do for these victims. I can give them a voice, and then better yet, I can make it go away. I can show the people what to do if it happens again. And there is a difference between a ghost and a haunting. Ghosts, the ghost atmosphere, doesn't know you're there, because it's just the stone tape theory. It's just a recording in time being played back over and over again. With hauntings, they know you're there. And one of the reported incidents that happens at the Crenshaw house is that when they're up in the attic, they feel like someone's reaching out and touching them. They feel like they're being touched. That's a haunting, which means that to the person who touched you, they think you're the ghost. So they reach out to see if you're real, or they're reaching out to get your attention because they're aware that something's going on, that they can't explain, so they reach out to touch. We've all had experiences where we think we've seen something, like especially in the dark or in certain moments where we've had, you put your hand out to see if it's real, the cold spots and that sort of thing. There's something bigger going on than just, the dead wandering the earth and going, hey, touching you, and that's what needs to be explained to people. And the dead are rising because the dead have had enough of being silenced. The dead have had enough of their stories not being told, and they're shouting and screaming, and nobody's been listening to them but me. And because these people are all dealing with the same people I'm dealing with, the same people you're dealing with, because the people we're all dealing with now in positions of power are all the ancestors of the people who did to them what is now being done to us. Which brings me back to the plantation in North Carolina, because now I'm thinking, remember when I said to George, the slave, when he came up and he said, can you explain to me what we did wrong? Like, what did we do wrong? Why did they do this to us? And I said to him, unfortunately, there's just some really evil people in this world, and they don't care. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but I don't know if Priscilla recorded this, but I know she was witness to it. And, I said to him, it does get better though. And I explained, you end up as as president, you end up as some of the most powerful people, most famous, well-known people in sports and entertainment and music and that, and you have a president, like a president of the United States and that, and he seemed happy with that. But then I said to him, do you have a message for African Americans? Like, do you have a message for people? And he said, switch places. And I always thought he meant, if you think you have it so hard now, switch places with us. Like, we'd switch lives with you guys any day. That's what I always thought he meant. But now, after the whole Chris Tompkins thing and this being reminded about the Crenshaw house, I'm wondering if he was saying, what happened to us is going to happen to you. That we're going to switch places. And then when you look at what Trump's doing to African Americans, like in Georgia, people like Chris Tompkins, all these African American boys that keep going missing, all these kids, the way that they're taking their SNAP benefits and EBT. I mean, some of them are, it's not just black people, there's white people being affected by that as well. And absolutely, if you're illegally taking them, then you shouldn't have the rights to them. But it's punishing all to get to a few. It's, and so now I'm wondering, because you're dealing with, and because a lot of these people back in those days that had the slaves, even though they were Christians and all of that, in my study, a lot of them were also Protestants and Lutherans. And when you're talking about Donald Trump specifically, and Lutherans are with, the KKK, they were neo-Nazis. Donald Trump's family came from, his father and that, they were Lutherans. And so I'm wondering whether what George was saying was switch places. They're going to switch places in time. They're going to take what was done to us, or they're taking what was done to us and moving it forward. Because now African Americans are losing all sorts of rights all over the place. They're being treated like crap. They're being encouraged to become addicts. They're being encouraged to act in a way where they're losing their children. The children are being put in the foster care system and being abused and sacrificed, and they go vanishing off the face of the earth. And like I said, from my knowledge in human trafficking, they take them either, to abuse them, for the shrexurals, to do bad things to them shrexurally, for scientific experiments, for organ harvesting, or for slave labour. Because that's what they did back then, and the Crenshaw house reminded me of it. I'd completely forgotten about it. I'd let that part of my past kind of go because I never thought I would ever go back to America. Once I realised who was behind what was being done to me, I thought there's no way I'm ever going to be allowed to go back to America. Trump and Elon Musk and the FBI and Palantir and Clinton and that, they're never ever going to let me step foot back in America because I know too much, I see too much. I'm pulling the veil back on not just the sort of things that they've been doing, but previous presidents. Abe Lincoln was at that house, and a lot of these presidents had babies to slaves. Some of them were genuinely in love with the women they had babies to, but some of them, it was, they just took it. And Uncle Bob at that house took it and impregnated, and he's reportedly have had over 300 babies with these young free women slaves. And then, of course, there ended up being an uprising because it was a free state, and there was a big riot, and the slaves ended up fighting back. And yeah, so, but it's like, I can go to these places and I can clear up all the things that people like the Warrens fed lies to people, and there are people out there who just eat it up, they soak it up. But then I came along with my little truth, and people were starting to eat it up. In America, people were starting to soak it up. I've said it then, and I'll say it now, and I've been saying it all the time. America seems to be the only country that gets what I do. They seem to be the only people that aren't afraid of what I am and get what I do. Americans are getting a lot of shit at the moment for being dumb. But you have to understand, if these people are pro-MAGA, it's literally out of their control. Especially if they're pro-Trump and pro-Musk at the same time, it's out of their control. They're not thinking for themselves. That stuff that's going on in Walmart at the moment with those digital price tags and being forced to have to download those scanning machines and stuff, that's one of the ways they get into your head. If you're okay with the fact that it comes up as $4 and when you get to the checkout it comes up as $23, if you're okay with that, they've gotten in your head. They come after the people they can't affect, which is why they've come after me, because they can't affect me. They've tried. They nearly had me fooled, but my ascension saved me and woke me up. And when I got woken up and I had access to the frequencies of all time through my physics, I started seeing the truth of who they really were and what they were doing. And then the dead started rising and saying, hey, they did this to me, can you speak on my behalf? And that's what I've been doing. And then they came after me hardcore because the dead are revealing secrets that Odin refuses to keep buried. They think that by worshipping Odin as cult of Odinists, and that a lot of them are Lutherans and Pentecostal and all that. They give Odin their secrets, but Odin will not hold on to sin. He doesn't allow sinners near the underworld. He will not keep the secrets of sin, which is why now, like with Ivana, she's come up and said he's hiding stuff under his golf course because Odin's not going to keep those secrets. He's the guardian of the underworld, as is, Isis and Anubis and all of them, all my ancestors. So Papatuanuku, my grandmother Earth, they bury their sins and secrets under her skin. And as an Indigenous woman, she's suffering because of it. And so I'm speaking for my grandmother as well as, for the dead. And so I can go to these places where they're trying to say a werewolf is doing this and a gnome is doing that and a ghost is doing this and demons are doing that. Like, what was it, Mackey's? Is it Bill Mackey's? Bobby Mackey's, the slaughterhouse and that. I can go to these places and I can get rid of all of it just by explaining to people what it is and what to do when you experience it the next time you go, by opening your minds. And when you open your mind, it opens your heart. And then you'll go there, and should you experience the cries and you'll know exactly what to do. And I've got the products, the tane clay and the rehua spray and all that you can buy and use yourself. Sacred soil, sacred clay. We used to go to Walton Colliery, me and my boys, and pick berries and stuff. And my boy used to go down into the river to bring up like Humphrey's clay so that I could practice modelling my clay. I've got photos of him down in the river pulling up big chunks of clay from Walton Colliery. Oh, it's so cute. And we'd pick blackberries and I'd make pie and jam. And I've even got a photo of a blackberry pie that Gabriel made because he was getting into making fruit pies, and I got photos of him making a blackberry pie. I couldn't have it. Well, no, did I have some? I can't remember. And they had it with ice cream, and it was apparently supposed to be absolutely beautiful, but that's because of Walton Colliery. And we used to, get the clay, and I'd get like bits and pieces for my little vials of talismans that I was working on the prototypes for, that Chris stole to sell on his Freya's Cauldron and on eBay. So, all's this to say, when it comes to the Crenshaw house and every other haunted location, don't believe everything you're being told. These people have reason to keep you constantly in fear. It makes them look good to perpetuate the myth that demons walk the earth and that the suffering wander the planet, and that when they don't, it's all physics. It's all dealing in the realms of supernatural. The paranormal side of it comes from the fact that they believe there's demons walking the earth, and they believe that the suffering are wandering the planet, because it's all in their head. What they believe and what they experience is what they manifest in their own experience. Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am. If you think it, you'll believe it, you'll experience it. Because the paranormal resides in your head. It's all in your head. Demons are the darkest recesses of the human mind where they've not been allowed to heal or refuse to pay off their karmic debt, and so it manifests in bad, evil, devilish behaviour, like Trump and Elon Musk and Keir Starmer and that. They're demons because the demons exist in their hateful, negative mindset, because people who aren't demonic in thought and behaviour wouldn't dream of committing genocide and war crimes and, stealing oil tankers from innocent nations and go around thinking they're the emperor when they're the emperor's, the story of the emperor's new clothes. But now people are starting to realise that they're not emperors and that they're walking around stark bollock naked, and now people are pointing and laughing at them. Like the veil is starting to come down on these people and just how dark and twisted their minds actually are, which means you're seeing their demonic side. Demons aren't little beasts that come up from hell that, have horns and a fork and a, whatever. They're not real physical beings. They're a psychological construct based on the purity of your mind in correlation to the purity of your heart. And if you have no conscience and you have a dead heart, a black heart, you have demons, and your inner demons manifest in real life. Understand? So I can explain all of this, and if I am destined to go back to America, I'm going to sink my teeth right into it. And while I'm looking for a place to call home, I will go from state to state. I said to my boy the other day, we'll just go around all 50 states to find somewhere that feels right to call home, that, where they've got what I'm looking for to build. And in the meantime, I'll make these shows and put them out there and give people a taste of what it is that we're going to be building once I build the foundation, because then I'm, horror movies and the Queen of Halloween and, Christmas movies and all the goody stuff as well. But Americans just soak up the paranormal and the supernatural like you wouldn't believe. If there was any country in the world that was going to embrace what it was I was selling in the form of the supernatural and paranormal in entertainment and stuff, it's going to be the Americans. They're the only ones that got me. They loved what I was bringing to the table. That's why, even though after only a couple of weeks of being on that show, I smashed a lot of records at that station, which they announced to the public. I'm just letting you know now, you broke records at this station, and that happened 2 or 3 times. And people were ringing the station and saying, can't you move the slot because I work during the day and I don't get to listen to her show? So they bought in repeats. Don't worry, we're going to repeat the show. And then they'd repeat my show at night, so that people who were working during the day who couldn't listen to my show or couldn't call in got to hear it at night. And then they were coming down to the station and leaving questions. Can you ask Debbie, blah, 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 blah. And they said, we'd never had that done before. So America's ready for me. It's just that when it comes to the radio and broadcasting and the internet and social media, it's all run and owned by all the people helping Elon Musk and Donald Trump cover up the crimes of, well, Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Clinton and all of that. Bezos and Zuckerberg and George Soros, they all own the media there. So my radio station, something would happen if I got signed up to a radio station there. Something would happen. They would do something to take it from me, because they're already trying to take it from me. I lost my WordPress, I lost 2 Facebooks, I lost an Instagram. I have very, very limited access to X. They're already trying to mess with my YouTube. They mess with my phone, as you know. They mess with my bank. I'm too scared to apply for my passport because I need to renew my passport in case they try and mess with something. Because if they've got access to my Gmail accounts where they're stopping refunds and all of that going through with communications I'm having with Deliveroo, what are they going to do when I apply for a passport that has my visa attached to it? Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. I mean, I'm not bothered by it. I'm leaving it all in the hands of God. But I'm just letting you know that if and when I do get to America, because I'm pretty sure that's where I'm headed with Trump and Musk and all that, when they get removed, it takes Palantir and all that down with them, because now that especially PayPal, who's owned by Musk and Sale, and that are under investigation for the Epstein farm, and Google as well, and Gates and the banks and all of that, now that they're all under investigation, they're all coming down together, and I'm just hoping it's because God's clearing the path so that I get safe passage, and then I can make my shows and put it all out there, because a lot of it's going to be exposing some of the crimes that their ancestors committed to Indigenous people and African Americans and that came from Europe and Britain, after Leif Erikson landed and, the Mayflower landed and all of that. And I'm doing it because not only am I Indigenous and black myself, but I know that my Middle Eastern and Indigenous side, I don't know about Iran, but I know with Egypt, absolutely we're bound to have had slaves, but I know that we had them as Māori royalty. So I'm helping my ancestors pay off a lot of karmic debt. And ironically, some of my ancestors would have been slaves as well, guaranteed. So I'm doing my bit, and I'm giving them all a voice. And I'd love to do the whole Emmett Till thing on location and get to speak for him again. The conversation that I had with him was on the Instagram that I lost. And Hannah, what was her name? Okashi? Hannah Okosh? That, yeah, there's a lot I can do. And not just for Indigenous people and, everyone that was used as slaves and indentured slaves and all of that. But, white people are innocent. There are a lot of white people who are innocent to this cause as well. I'm not racist. I don't speak for one. I'm just doing my bit to pay off. I'm doing what's right. And you can't speak for one if you're not going to speak for all. And there's good and bad on both sides, especially when it comes to American history. But I'm helping the ones who are innocent, who didn't deserve to die the way that they did. That's who I'm speaking for. So I'm balancing out the scales for them, and in turn paying off karmic debt for my own ancestors. So, I really think I'm getting ready to move to America. I think God's clearing the path so that I can, when I'm ready to put it out there, I can put it out there because I've got nothing stopping me or holding me back. So, yeah, the Crenshaw house, I've put links in the description box so you can look at various investigations and stuff. But if I can go there, I would be able to go there and sort everything out. I wouldn't be afraid of that place at all. So I'd love to go to the Hellfire Club down south as well, where Benjamin Franklin was, where they sacrificed that woman. She got lured into thinking the man was going to marry her, and she turned up and they sacrificed her for the Illuminati. So there's a lot I can do, and because I've got the products now, the Tane clay and the Rehua spray. And then when I build my foundation and I build my School of Alchemy with my students and that, they'll be given like a bag to take with them that'll have all the tools of the trade, and they'll have access to my clays and sprays and that, and then when they leave they can go and do their own investigations knowing what I've taught them and use my clays and sprays and then just reorder more through me. So yeah, okay, so there we go. So I'm going to go and have my second half of breakfast now. I just had coffee and toast, and now I'm going to have cereal. I'll speak to you later. We're just interesting to see what's about to happen with me with America, eh? I'm doing the right thing. Do the right thing. Yeah, so I personally believe that Chris was sacrificed in a hunting party. I think he was hunted. He was used as a sacrifice. I could be wrong, but looking at the evidence and knowing what I know, I think they chose him to be sacrificed in one of their safari hunting parties connected to the KKK. So, I'll speak to you later. Connected to the KKK and Epstein. I will speak to you later. Mwah.